worship today. Technical difficulties aside, it was good for us to be centered, and those words from Ecclesiastes certainly remind us of the varying times of our lives, especially as we're coming to the end of term, a time for final papers and all of those sorts of things. So Jackie is the first person to be presenting today, and she sent me her presentation, which has been pre-recorded. So let's see if we can get this to work. Jackie, is there anything you wanted to say in advance?
There was one change to what I have in the presentation, in that the choir did not end up singing behind the tableau, but rather beside it, because with the backdrop that we put up, you couldn't hear them as well.
Oh, you know what? I don't think I did the little share sound. There. Is everybody seeing Jackie's?
No sound.
No sound?
Yeah, it's just
your YouTube tab is muted.
Oh,
right underneath.
That'll do it.
Yeah.
There we go.
Back in the 1990s, a woman named Liz Rodman was the worship leader for our Easter Sunday service. And during this service, she included a drama tableau, which was the first time I had been exposed to this type of dramatization. And you may all be really familiar with it, but just in case, drama tableau is a series of held poses to depict a story. And that Easter drama tableau has stuck with me, and I have always wanted to incorporate this style of message into a service. And so when this project was assigned in our Worship Foundations class, I knew that this was the aesthetic worship option I wanted to present. And while Easter is bright and colorful and full of celebrations, our presentations were due prior to Easter Sunday. And so I decided to do this tableau on the story of the crucifixion. And first, I needed to find suitable music for the drama. And I knew I wanted it to be somewhat haunting and bring the message of the crucifixion, but focus on the love of Christ and our gratitude for our salvation. And I didn't find all the qualities I was looking for in the Lenten offerings of Voices United or More Voices. However, in the hymns for the Holy Week in Voices United, I discovered a gem, the perfect accompaniment for this type of drama. In What Wondrous Love Is This? And I needed it to be slowed down a bit and some of the verses repeated, but I believed that it would work well. And with the music selected, I started to plan the series of tableaus that would be included in the drama. First, I read all the gospel scriptures of the crucifixion story to give me a full and complete understanding of the imagery that would be depicted. And next I searched online and discovered that there are several different portrayals of the Stations of the Cross and in drama tableau, and some included many stations and some fewer. And I made my selections based on how I imagined the scenes could be held in the drama, and that a complete story would still be told. And finally, I looked at hundreds of pictures of the crucifixion story online, old paintings, drawings, clip art, any and all that I could locate to create an image in my mind of how to set up the tableaus for the drama. We have been learning about movement and the body in our course, especially in Module 4, Music and Movement. And this drama tableau brings many of the ideas of that module into play. Ruth Duck in Worship for the Whole People of God explains that participatory worship needs to be contextual to engage people, both those actively participating and those who are engaged in observing the movement. And Bracken Long tells us that worship is experienced in the body. We encounter the divine in our bodies. Equally important was to create a visual that presents the physical body experience of Christ and those involved in the crucifixion story, to bring to life those images such as Pilate washing his hands and the hammering of the nails, the reaction of Jesus's body to the lashes, the heightened emotion of the raised fists of those shouting, "Crucify him," and the vehement denial of Peter. And with the music and the ideas for the tableau drama, it was time to find people who would take part and bring it to life. And that proved much more difficult. Many of our senior members were very clear that this type of thing was for a much younger crowd. And with that sage advice, I looked to our youth. And at our church, our regularly attending youth number 2. So they called on some willing cousins in, and we had 4 youth willing to take part in the drama. We added 2 younger siblings for a total of 6. And this limited number challenged me to recreate the scenes of the tableau to create a full picture with less bodies than I had initially envisioned. Next, on to costuming. And the choice of Black clothing was to depict the darkness of a Good Friday atmosphere, and the purple backdrop shows the hope of Easter and the darkness of the crucifixion. And incorporating the opera masks were important, as I wanted the focus to be on the body movements to tell the story and not on expressions. The white opera masks did remove the expressions on the face, but they drew the eye, and I wanted to keep the focus on the movement and the hold of the bodies in the tableau. So to lessen the starkness of the white mask, the tableau actors painted their own masks to reflect their feelings of the characters and the story they were portraying. And they used only black, purple, silver, and clear glitter to create their personalized mask. And the mask for Jesus was left mostly white to reflect the light of God. And I spoke with our organist, and I enlisted her and the choir to provide the music for the tableau. And they decided to sing behind the tableau to create a more haunting mood for the music. And we created a backdrop so that the scene would stand out and the actors would not be lost in the choir space behind the raised platform. The most difficult aspect of creating this tableau was creating the steps to move from one tableau picture to the next. Each figure needed to know how and where they would move from one tableau scene to the next held scene. It needed to flow, prevent quick movements back and forth across the stage, and tell the story without being complicated or hurried. And this part needed to be created and recreated and recreated again. And several additional changes were needed to accommodate the size of the stage, the ability of the actors, and the continuity and flow. The number of tableaus were reduced from 12 to 10, which meant a rewrite to address 2 incidents of incorporating 2 tableaus into one. And the final changes were completed 2 weeks before presenting the tableau. And this aesthetic project has been a huge stretch for me, much more artistic and challenging than writing a play or a skit. And Kevin introduced into our Module 4 music and movement discussion of Wagner's total work of art. And Kevin wrote, Wagner used this perspective in the design of his operas, so that all the elements from costume to set design, use of space, use of theme, to the presence of the audience themselves were integral and of relatively equal importance and significance in the experience of the opera. And I thank you, Kevin, for sharing that. And this has been my total work of art. Each part, the costumes, the movements, the music, the story, the hold of the tableau scenes played an equal role in creating the final project. Together, the organist and choir, the tableau actors, those helping behind the scenes, and myself went to work to realize the images and ideas for this drama tableau. It is our hope that through this experience, you'll be drawn into the story, body, mind, and spirit, the encounter of the divine. And please enjoy this hauntingly beautiful story of the greatest love the world has ever known. Thank you.
soul, to bear the dreadful curse for my soul. What wondrous love is this, O my soul, O my soul? What wondrous love is this, O my soul? What wondrous love is this that caused the Lord of life to lay aside his crown for my soul, to lay aside his crown for my soul. To God and to the Lamb I will sing, I will sing. To God and to the Lamb I will sing. To God and to the Lamb, who is the great I am, while millions join the theme, I will sing, I will sing. While millions join the theme, I will sing. And when from death I'm free, I'll sing on, I'll sing on. And when from death I'm free, I'll sing on. And when from death I'm free, I'll sing and joyful be, and through eternity I'll sing on, I'll sing on, and through eternity I'll sing on.
Wow, Jackie, thank you. That was amazing.
They did an amazing job. I think the Holy Spirit
Not
was
hearing
definitely
you.
with us. Oh. Now can you?
I hear you.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Yeah, I hear you as well.
All right.
I've lost audio.
Okay.
I have the host if you need to stop out, drop out for a moment to maybe that'll reset things.
She can't hear you. Maybe you should type it.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, now I can hear you.
Okay,
I
good.
don't know what went on.
That's all
Anyway.
right. So I really felt like the Holy Spirit was with us in that presentation. It just went so well, and the kids did such a great job. The choir was amazing. It went over really well, and people really felt that the held poses, like the congregation felt that the held poses really did imprint the story and make it so visually meaningful for them. So I think it all turned out well.
Yeah. Well, congratulations for stretching and for involving so many people in your site in this process.
Yeah, I was wondering about that, how that would work. Actually, at first, when I was getting a lot of no's, I was like, maybe I need to change what I'm going to do. But in the end, I think that the number 6 worked really well for the size of the stage, that if I had had even more people, it would have been too crowded.
Great. Anybody have questions or comments for Jackie? Sonia?
First, I was just going to say the thought process that goes into that just blew my mind, Jackie. Well done. Those poignant moments when Jesus's head just went slack, just such an emotional impact that had. So I just bravo to you. And I was curious, are you connected to Kathy Douglas in our region?
No.
Okay, because this is something that would be so powerful to share. And she does a lot of roundtable discussions in our region for people working with youth and things like that. And I just wonder about the seeds that you planted in pulling these kids together too. So I just thought I'd throw that name out to you.
If you wouldn't mind sending that to me, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. Angela, then Tabitha, then Donna.
Thank you, Jackie. That was very powerful. I'm wondering if the participants had given you any feedback on what it felt like to do that.
Yeah, the young people really brought the story to life for them, and they talked a lot about how difficult it was to act out the brutality of the story, and especially for Abby, who was young. She's only 9, and she's pretty young, and she cried about it.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. Thank you.
Tabitha.
I was from the entire project, how you planned so much out and involving everyone. But I just see that as such a great opportunity for faith formation. I mean, you had 2 children in this church, and then they brought friends or cousins, and how, having a need brought about this. So I think, that demonstrates your creativity and pastoral skills as well. So wonderful.
Thank you, Tabitha.
Thanks. And Donna.
I just wanted to say thank you. That was so powerful. The combination of the music and the poses and the starkness of the masks, it was really, really moving. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jackie, I'm so glad that I'm going to get to come and do a site visit with you in June, and I can actually reference how powerful having, your whole site work on this particular assignment really was. That they've truly embodied what it means to be a learning site. And I think they need to be congratulated on that.
They certainly do. I think the work that they did, I mean, I had the vision, but they're the ones that made it happen. And so it was so, for me, I was sitting there while they were doing it, and I had tears. I couldn't even, hold them back. Not that I tried that hard, but, it's just, I just let it wash over me, because at that point, my work was done. I was just, was able to experience it, something that they weren't able to do. But I'm hoping when we get together for our pizza party that I will show them the video put together, because as we know here on Zoom, for me, my Zoom does the best picture. And so I recorded the visual on Zoom, but I used my phone for the audio. And I thought it wouldn't really matter if it wasn't matched up exactly when I put it into the movie, because the choir was going to be behind. But as it turned out, at the practice with that all set up, you really couldn't hear the choir well enough behind that backdrop. And so they moved to the side, and we have one choir member that I couldn't cut out of the video because she was that close to the stage. And so then I had to match that video much better to make sure that it didn't look odd that her singing wasn't quite matched to that. So that was my tricky bit in doing the actual movie part. But yeah, for me, I just like got to sit and enjoy it, and they will be able to watch it now that it's together, and we'll do that at our get together, our thank you party, to let them see that and be able to experience it too.
Great. Thanks. Tabitha, did you have another question, or is your hand just still up? Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. What a great way to start this round of aesthetic expressions. And I think, you've either inspired everybody towards this, or you've made them go, oh my goodness, never in a million years. But that was really awesome.
I say absolutely give it a try. And it was a lot of creative work that I wasn't used to doing, and thinking that I wasn't used to thinking, but it was a real growing experience for me, especially making that deep meaning for this particular passage. And I could see how it could really work for any story you wanted to bring more to life.
I'd love to see the encounter of Jesus with the Samaritan woman done that way. It could be so powerful. So yeah, well, maybe that's something to get some of your classmates to do this summer in worship. How cool would that be to explore? So great. All right, thanks so much, Jackie. Ruth, you are next on my list in terms of sign up sheet. Where did Ruth go? There she is. She's still muted.
Sorry, I was muted.
I
need to find something so I can share it.
Okay.
Hang on.
And Philip, you will be after Ruth, just in terms of a heads up. And then probably we'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back for Jamie, Lois, and Tabitha.
Here it is. Hang on. Oh, here it is. This is better, actually. I'm going to try and share this screen now.
Okay, you should be able to.
There it is. Okay, before I start it, I'm going to explain what it is. Not quite 10 years ago, I explored biblical storytelling as something I was invited to. For those of you who don't know what biblical storytelling is, there's a network of biblical storytellers out of the US that's international in scope. And one time when I was leading a messy church in the parish I was working in as a children and youth family youth worker, somebody from our diocese who was a postulant wanted to attend a messy church and came to mine. And I was telling the story of the prodigal son with Lego building blocks and a 4-year-old. And we were just exploring the story on the floor on a carpet. And she thought it would be great if I went with her to the Canadian chapter's festival of biblical storytelling. And so when I attended, I was amazed by how people could memorize scripture and tell it as a story. So, and I hadn't really done this in about 9 years or so. And I thought this would be an incredible opportunity to share the art of biblical storytelling with everyone. So here goes.
Not getting sound.
Oh my goodness.
Did you optimize sound when you started screen sharing?
No, but I'm going to do that right now.
So click out and then go back in.
Okay. Might be able to do it this
I
way.
think you have to stop screen sharing.
Original sound. And that should be okay. I did change it. And it is changed. I just have to.
You have to screen share again.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know why it says play video to add notes, but there we go.
Nope, still no sound.
Oh my goodness. This is what I'm going to do then. Do you think it works if I play the sound on my phone?
I'm still not hearing anything.
Okay. Was born of the Spirit. Nope, that was in the middle. Nicodemus said to Jesus. Okay. Try this. Stop sharing. Just going to reset it. Oh my. Now, Nicodemus, the leader of the Jews, he came to Jesus by night and said to him, Rabbi, we know you are a teacher that has come from God. For no one can do these signs that you do apart from the presence of God. Jesus answered him, Very truly I tell you, no one can see the kingdom of God without being born from above. Nicodemus said to him, How can anyone be born having grown old? Can one enter a second time into the mother's womb? Jesus answered him,
Very truly I tell you, no one can enter the kingdom of heaven without being born of water and of spirit. What is born of flesh is flesh, and what is born of spirit is spirit. The wind blows where it chooses, and you hear the sound of it. You do not know where it comes from or where it goes. And so Nicodemus said to Jesus, "How can we?" Jesus answered, "Are you a teacher, and yet you do not understand these things? Very truly I tell you, we speak of what we know, testify to what we have seen, and yet you do not receive our testimony. If I have told you about earthly things and you do not believe, how can I tell you things? No one has ascended into heaven except the one who descended from heaven, the Son of Man. And just as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted, so that whoever believes may have eternal life. That he gave his only Son, that everyone who believes in him may not perish, but may have eternal life. God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but in order that the world might be saved. I apologize, it wasn't quite in sync, but hopefully everybody heard it.
We certainly heard most of it, Ruth. So thank you. Thank you. Sometimes technology just doesn't always work well for us.
So, I have been experiencing that.
Yes, yes. So Ruth, did you do that in worship 2 Sundays ago?
Actually, what I did was slightly different. I prepared this one for class to share what that might look like. But on the Sunday that I did it, I actually had a partner so that it was more of a conversation between Nicodemus and Jesus. And so the way I designed the service was, in the Anglican tradition, we usually read the gospel from a book from amongst the congregation, and we did do that. And I also had a copy of the verses of the gospel available to congregants in their bulletin so that it's printed out for them. And then we also had this conversation. Biblical storytelling is telling the story verbatim. So I learned the story exactly the way the gospel is written. My partner, on the other hand, wanted to be more creative. And so he added a bit more drama into it, but it was very effective in terms of how it turned out. So we had our conversation, and then the sermon part was more of an interactive sermon. What I did to prepare was some deep dives in exegeting the text and reading many commentaries and coming up with a lot of questions that might be asked and being prepared to answer those questions as we had interactive conversation. So the idea was that we had a conversation with Nicodemus, who also participated as part of that sermon. The feedback that I got was very positive in terms of the conversation that we had. One participant said that could be a sermon on its own. Would I try it again? Yes, I think so. But in terms of the interaction between myself and the congregation, I think if you start to do something like this in a Bible study, where people are more comfortable sharing their thoughts and ideas, you can build on that and be able to do that as a sermon. The people that I was engaging with had never done anything like this before. It was very new for them. They did appreciate the people who interacted, because in every congregation, you're going to have people who are more comfortable with it than others. And it was, the experience was very good for me and for them. But in the feedback forms that I had handed out and asked them to return, reflected people's introversion. They were really enjoying other people's interaction, asking questions and giving responses and having conversation with Nicodemus and Jesus. But they weren't prepared to ask their own questions or offer their own thoughts. What I would do differently, probably create more opportunity for them to talk to each other in the pews. We did a little bit of that, but the sermon time for our tradition is a lot shorter than it might be in other denominations. So I would have to rethink how we would do this. But it was very well received.
That's great, Ruth. And yeah, you're always working within the constraints of your own tradition and what is expected and appropriate and acceptable when you choose to do something on, on a Sunday morning. So you're right, in a Bible study or a less traditional time or place, you could do more. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Coach. Yeah. Anybody have comments or questions for Ruth? Jackie first.
Ruth, that was great. I'm curious about your process of how you memorize that scripture.
I was going back to what I had learned because I took a workshop. The Canadian chapter of Biblical Storytelling offers a festival where it's 2 days long. So on the first day, you have the opportunity to attend workshops. And I did do one workshop. It was called Storytelling 101. And there were 7 steps to learning a biblical story. One of the key things that I remembered from that was that to really know a story, you have to work on it for 6 weeks. Unfortunately, I didn't really have 6 weeks that I gave it, but I did give it 3. And in that process of memorizing the scripture, I added doing the exegetical work, which I did not do previously. So for me, it became a much deeper experience, because then when I could do the verse where just as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, that had more meaning for me, and to be able to express that as part of the conversation was more effective. So just spending time memorizing it verse by verse and connecting them together. And also I find that if I write it out, it helps me memorize it. So it's a combination of those things. But really working with John, who was Nicodemus, that helped put life to it, because then it truly is that conversation. So that was a big piece of my process in creating.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Other questions or comments back for Ruth?
There is something I would like to share.
Sure.
In the publication, I don't know if I can see. Yeah, in this publication of the Anglican Church for March of this year, and it might be available in the library, there's actually an article by someone that I met way back when. His name is John Epp, and he is really wonderful at biblical storytelling, and they did an interview with him. So if you ever get a chance to kind of find that and read it, it's very good.
Thanks, Ruth. Anybody else with comments, questions? Okay.
I'm just going to say, I want you in my group for the summer, boy, if you can be that creative. We can have screens, and then we can have like you know, first person storytelling, and yeah, I'm looking at worship a whole new way. I'm thinking we're going to have some fun.
I think sorry, thank you very much for that, Tabitha. But I also think it can make us stronger preachers, because there are other workshops that they had available, which I didn't take at the time. There was one called Storytelling and Preaching, and you can bring that storytelling into your preaching and teaching. So maybe that's something I should look into as it becomes closer.
Right. I am so looking forward to worshiping with some of you this summer and seeing how all of these conversations and practices and theory all unfolds. Oh, thank you so much. All right, we're going to do one more presentation before we take a short break. So Philip, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. I will share my screen. There we go. I'm assuming that you can all see the screen. Okay, so thank you everybody for your patience and your attention as I go through this presentation. Just as a side note, this is the first PowerPoint I've ever created, so that in itself was an interesting experience and allowing me to express some creativity. So I entitled this Conversation with a Tree. You have to excuse me as I ease into this presentation. It's funny how I'm more nervous about this presentation than the last sermon that I gave. So I'd like to begin by reminding everyone that it is the spring equinox today. That is significant for the nature of my creation and the theme of it. And it's great to see the birds singing and everything like that. So I'm so happy about it being spring and the synchronicity of my presentation being on the spring equinox. It's just awesome. I also want to point out that this was an interesting process for me because I consider myself creative in the way that I'm very imaginative. But I don't have a lot of opportunities to actually express that in forms. I've done creative writing in the past. But that's pretty much it. So this has been a very interesting experience for me. I created a silent drama script that could be expressed in worship. And I will get to the reason why it's a silent drama later on in the presentation. So that brings me to the presentation and how we're going to unfold. So I've chosen to demonstrate or present the drama through a narrative in describing it to you. As well, then we'll be going to a drama anatomy. So the drama anatomy is basically going through the entire the script in its parts and sharing the process and what is on it and the reasons for that being there. After that, we will unpack the questions that were required for this assignment, and then there will be time for class comments and questions at the end. So without further ado, I'd like to share with you the narrative of the drama that I wrote. So Act 1 starts with, if you would imagine, you've got the stage and you've got one person on one side of the stage. They are the lead actor. And so the lead actor receives a phone call. Pantomime's receiving a phone call, and they're kind of getting a request from someone, thinking about it, but eventually they kind of express a reluctant no, apologetic. They feel like they want to say yes, but they say no. So it kind of brings forth a kind of an inner struggle, and that's going to be a theme throughout the entire narrative, is that inner struggle between what you feel called to do, what the Spirit is calling you to do, but for whatever reason, you can't bring yourself to do it. So the lead says no, hangs up the phone, notices on the watch what time it is, So they're startled, and so then they rush, starting to go across the stage. They grab a jacket, which could be pantomimed, or it could be an actual prop. I will refer to that later on in the presentation. Next, they hop onto a chair, which is going to be the vehicle. And as they're driving, they're growing impatient. They're rolling their eyes. They're getting annoyed by all the other people, gesturing around. And then they arrive at their destination. They're not actually moving, but they're just pantomiming that they're driving. And then the lead arrives at the destination, where there's the first actor that they encounter is someone who waves at them, gives them a smile. But because of the annoyance of the driving and just that whole issue, the person just storms past, kind of ignores the person, but makes it seem like they did notice the person. They then encounter a homeless person, and this homeless person comes up to them, not expecting anything, but asks for a handout. The lead actor kind of is jolted back into a little bit of a reality and is able to get a little bit more centered, and so gives the person a little bit of money from their wallet, a little bit apologetic because that's all they can give, and then continues on. The homeless person sits down and is thankful. There's another homeless person who is a little bit more hopeful now because they saw the handout that the other one received. And so this person approaches. And then the lead notices the other person and really has that struggle. Yes, they may really have some more money, but they don't really want to give out more money. So they're shrugging, apologetic. They shake their head. They refer to, they point at the other person. I already gave, I'm sorry. And then they continue on. But they really have that internal struggle of just like, oh gosh, the person pauses for a moment, thinks I really should have given some, but I didn't want to give any more money. So they reluctantly continue on. And they notice another homeless person asleep. And this person's up on the stairs. As a side note, I mentioned in the script that the person should be up on the stairs so that they can be viewed by everybody within the congregation. Next, person sees the person, shakes their head. They want to do something, but they can't bring themselves to actually do something. So then the person continues on along the stage and then pauses, looks back at all the missed opportunities of being able to do something, to be able to give more. And then just with full of remorse, the person exits the stage, and that is the end of Act 1. And then Act 2 begins. In between acts, I'll get back to that when I go through the anatomy of the thing. So Act 2 begins. The lead enters onto the stage, still torn, still upset, looking very remorseful about the missed opportunities. At this time, the person looks at a cross that they're carrying or a Bible that's in their pocket, or kind of pantomimes it, but that's kind of an important prop. So it should be actually in the thing. They look at it, they're torn. You can see the struggle between their faith calling them to what they know they should be doing, but they, for whatever reason, they decided not to. This person sighs, continues walking along. The scenery has changed in between the act, and so it's a natural scene. So there's plants, there's trees, there's nature all around. And then the person starts being refreshed by nature, gazing out over the vista. The person is refreshed and is getting more comfortable, forgetting about what happened back then. There's some animals. The person's like, oh, look at the animal, waves at the animal, and is really being fed by the gift that nature is giving them, and that is to be refreshed. They continue on, and then they approach a very large tree, and the person is in such awe with this tree. It is amazing. The person then notices that it's starting to rain, so holds out their hand. Oh, it's starting to rain, so they're kind of giddy a little bit. So they run underneath the tree, underneath the boughs, so they can get some shelter from the rain. And then they're looking out at the rain, kind of smiling and just being amused at the whole general situation. The person then pantomimes that they're starting to get hungry, and then notices that the tree actually has some fruit. So then the lead will pick some apple and then pantomime eating some and then put some more in their pockets. And then the person eventually starts feeling cold. So it starts pantomiming that they're feeling cold. Then they put on their jacket, but they're still feeling a little bit too cold. So then they pick up some of the dry branches around, and then take some dead branches off the tree, and they build themselves a little fire. They light the fire. Oh, that's way better. They're comforted by the warmth. And then they start eating the fruit again. And it's at that moment that the realization comes. And then they're looking at the food, and then they're looking at the jacket, they're looking at the fire, of all these things that have been given to them through nature. And so they then step out away and then just look up at the tree, marveling at it. The branches came from the tree gave them food, gave them branches for food, for food. And then even the jacket itself came from nature. And then the person pantomimes a house while looking at the tree, trying to get across to the people viewing that even the tree's life is given up to the person for their home. And so then the person looks at the cross of their Bible up at the tree, and it's just filled with that realization of that self-giving for the other person. And then the person starts realizing and nods and smiles. They understand now. They thank the tree. And then they start exiting the stage, and that ends Act 2. Act 3 begins, and it's back to the original scene with all the homeless people and the person that greeted them. And the leader, filled with that revelation of giving, walks up to the person that was sleeping, takes off their jacket, puts it on the sleeping homeless person, and just really is just filled with that same kind of restoration that they felt when they encountered nature in the previous scene. And then they head over to the homeless people, and then they gets out the fruit that the tree gave them and gives that out to the homeless people, and then continues on to the greeter, who isn't smiling or waving at them this time, but then joyfully waves and smiles, and they have that reconciliation of that happiness and that mutual greeting. And then the person continues on to the chair that is their car, and then they drive on, but now they're so patient, they're so much more calm. They wave people on, and they just really enjoy that process and just be in the moment. They're in the present. Person arrives back at their home, and then once again, they look back at the previous, towards where all the other encounters were, and they look at their Bible and their cross, and they just nod and just really have that acceptance of, yes, this is the way. And then they come to a decision and a realization. They head to that phone, they dial, they call back that person that made them that offer, which isn't really expressed what it is. And then they give a huge affirmation, yes, I will do this. And then that brings it to the end of the narration of the drama. And so the theology that I kind of wanted to bring into this drama was two stories, Matthew 5:38-42, and that's when the person asks for a coat and then you give your cloak as well as Mark 12:41-44, which is the widow who gives pretty much all she owns to the temple. And the basic message of the story is that selfless giving, to give and give and give. But then there is that deeper meaning that goes down below just giving, because yes, it is good to give, but you're not expected to just keep on giving material things. So the underlying thing is that ultimate sacrifice of one's life for God. So it doesn't matter whether it's time or things or even your talents or your profession. It's just that selfless giving of your life to God. And now I'll go through the anatomy of the drama. So in the script that I wrote, I have all these different sections as well as the narrative at the end, which we've gone through. So it starts off with a preface, and that introduces to the people who want to perform the drama for a congregation the theme of the drama, the scriptural relations that I mentioned, as well as the struggle between, that's one of the most important parts, is the struggle of an inherent nature of being called by the Spirit to do things, but then turning that down. So that struggle was mentioned in the preface. And then there's the participants. So it's got the required number of actors, as well as the number of actors and the role requirements. And one thing that it really stresses in this is that the lead should be someone who can emote very, very well. Because it's a silent drama, there's no dialogue. So someone has to really be able to pantomime. So the strongest person that can do that should be the lead. It also mentions things like technicians. So if there's going to be additional sound, if there's going to be lighting, that kind of thing, because not all congregations have that kind of thing. But if you do, then it describes ways in which that can be used. As well as stagehands, because in between the acts, you're going to need people to move around things like plants and decorations and that kind of thing. You can either have, it mentions that you could either have actual stagehands or even the actors themselves could do it. And then there's props. So there's the required props. Like I mentioned, the cross in the Bible was kind of an important prop. You could have the jacket as well, the chair. It talks about wardrobe options. So you could go to thrift store and get things for the homeless people, try and make them a little bit more ragged. So it's more apparent to their role in the drama. And then there's modifications that I added. So that's possible things that you could tweak and change the drama. So obviously one option is that you could add words, you could add dialogues, then it can be a spoken drama. You could also add music. So if it's still a silent drama, you could have music going while the people are acting. Or you could even have the music only in between the acts, so that instead of people just sitting and waiting for people to move things around, there could be music played. Another thing is the age. So this is another thing that I put in that I think would be an excellent thing, is if it's modified to be acted by children. So if it's done by children, obviously there's going to have to be some dialogue. I think it would be a little bit more appropriate and easier for younger children to do a drama with dialogue. And then with the props, you could even have the children create the props throughout the weeks leading up to that. So they could build a tree and all sorts of stuff like that. And then the next phase is setup. So the setup is for just getting everything ready for the beginning of the scene. So the lighting, where you want all the actors and all the props and stuff like that. And then there's the narrative. And I did go through the narrative with you. But in addition to describing what people should be doing, there's also prompts for lighting, as well as moving things around and stuff like that. And now we'll go to unpacking the questions. So what led me to create what I did? Well, first of all, I wanted it to be, I've been very inspired by Celtic Christianity and Celtic theology. So I really wanted nature to be a part of this process. And I have a firm belief that creation is Christ-soaked, and that a lot of the revelation of God and Christ's teaching can actually be found in nature. And I have a love of acting and performing. And so I love the idea of dramas. It doesn't matter in what kind of context. I absolutely love acting in drama. And I have read that drama attracts younger audiences. I'm not sure about the churches that you guys preside in, but a lot of the ones that I have been to, there hasn't been that many children. And so it would be awesome to get more children in. And having drama would be a great method of doing that. Ruth C. Duck said that movement and silence engender emotions and incarnating the word, and that drama reveals human stories. So if you have a drama and you have a story, it's very relatable. So people can really relate and feel the emotions that are present in that. My creative process was inspiration from nature. So I went for a walk and I was walking around with trees, and then I started realizing, kind of like how the lead did in the drama, that nature a lot of the times just gives itself freely to you. I know that a lot of the times nature can't stop you, but still it's just the fact that nature just selflessly gives to any who would take, and even of their lives. We cut down trees to build our houses, and so they've given their whole lives to us. I was originally going to write dialogue for this drama. But then when I was reading the texts through the modules, and then it talked about the importance of silence, of having in between words, just the silence really amplifies that. And then I was thinking how much more people would be drawn into a drama if it was silent. Instead of just kind of sitting there and just listening and not really paying attention, you really have to focus on what's going on. And so I think that the silence would almost be deafening in the way that it draws people in. And then I went through the drama in my mind. So a lot of my creation was going through the process in my mind, thinking about how I would actually enact this. And I kind of got a little bit tear-eyed up when I was imagining myself as the lead and going through the process. I also ran through the drama in my mind of being the audience and watching it and making sure that there's that I'm taking consideration for the room, for the stage, and that's where I lifted the person up on the stage, the person that was lying down, so they can actually be seen by the congregation. I enacted the drama in my living room, and to account for time and things like that. I did a little bit of research online into drama creation, more notably for churches, to get some ideas in the creation of that. And then I had to consider all the information one could use to run a drama. So I had to think about lighting, had to think about sign. I don't know the word I was trying to say there. So I just had to consider all these things that you didn't really think about when you're first initially working on a drama, but then I had to sit down and go through all those things. So how would this be used in worship? So first of all, we read that things need to be transformative in worship. Things can sometimes challenge and shock people to shape them, and it needs to be embodied. And I find that the drama would be very good at creating an embodied experience for people. It needs to be in unison with the whole theme of the service. So the prayers, the scripture, the message all needs to be thematic. So I would use the same scripture that I mentioned before to be read, and then the sermon would talk about the same theme. Now for the order of service, so I was thinking, would the drama come before the message or after the message? If it came before the message, then the sermon could really go into unpacking the drama and talk about the themes in good detail. I eventually decided that I would prefer it to be located after the sermon, and that's because when I was reading through the modules readings, it said that a lot of the things that happen after the message in the later part of the service is the congregation's affirmation that yes to the message. And so you would notice that in the narrative of the drama, the final thing that the person did was go on the phone and say yes. So I was hoping that the people would be connected to that, and that would be the whole assembly's affirmation of yes to the message and to the prompts of the Spirit. And then I was also thinking that it could also be modified to be the message. So it could be the entire sermon of that worship service. Rationale for using art in worship. So art allows us to apply our entire selves to the task. And as a ritual, we've read that it can have so much meaning than words alone. So in the reading, we've read about that story about the person putting down flowers on the memorial, and that had so much more meaning than simply just saying something. And so that's how I believe that the drama would work really well for that. And we give our all when we prepare. So we'd have to put so much prayer and love and preparation into the creation of this drama. You'd have to work with all the other leaders and presiders to make sure everything goes smoothly. And then Duck says, vivid language burrows deep into human experience. And so even pantomime is language, and that really digs deep into human experience so that people can connect with that. And drama also connects to the relational stories of our lives. And it's a silent and visual proclamation of scripture. So instead of having just scripture read to us, it's it's enacted right in front of us, and you can see that story come to life within the drama. And thoughts that I hope that this work could evoke is, I would hope that it's an embodied experience, that people would be drawn with the lead, and that they would be able to have a relational experience and feel all the experiences of not just the lead, but everyone involved in the drama. I would hope that people would feel encouraged to give more, not necessarily always give, as I mentioned before, but just to feel that encouragement to be more giving. And I'd hope that people would think about the drama after the worship and reflect on the drama, reflect on themselves and how they can relate to the story that was presented in front of them. And I would hope also that people would have a deeper connection with nature and contemplating God's revelation and creation. So I would hope that people would recognize how nature gives, but then that they could also think about the other scriptural messages and Christ's teachings, and maybe try and find that in nature for themselves and kind of have a deeper connection with creation. And I would also imagine that people may feel remorse, guilt, or anger, and that comes into the whole, sometimes people need to be shocked and challenged in order to feel the Spirit and grow from worship. And so that is pretty much my presentation. Thank you all for your time, and I'll open the floor to comments and questions.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so very much. I would love to see this embodied.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. Comments or questions back to Philip? Philip, do you think that there might be an opportunity to bring this to worship sometime?
Yes, I'm actually very much hoping that I'm going to be able to bring it to worship next month.
Great. Other folks, comments, questions? Donna.
I just wanted to say, Philip, there can't have any questions because that was so very well explained. Thank you so much. I could honestly understand the step-by-step process and almost feel like I could just walk in there and arrange this. So it was very, very well explained. Thank you.
Indeed.
Thank you. And that was basically my hope with the creation of the script, that I could give it to anyone and then they could take it and use it and modify it too.
You may have classmates who would like to have it.
Yeah, I was going to ask, can I email it to you, Susan, and then you can distribute it to whoever wants it?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. You can send it to me and I will do that. Any other comments? Jackie.
That's another great summer worship idea.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You could be on my team. I'd appreciate that.
That'd be great.
Great. All right.
That's done then. We're the third week.
Good. You can pull those things together. Thank you so much, Philip. I'm going to suggest that we just take 5 minutes to do whatever needs to be done. Back at 5:40, and then Jamie, you will go next, and then Lois, and then Tabitha. Okay. All right. See you back in 5.
Hopefully that's showing for everyone.
It is.
Wonderful. So on our first day of class, I went through the syllabus and I identified this assignment as something that would challenge me. In my mind, I was like, bring on the research paper. But this assignment, I was a bit afraid of. And if I speak about that, when I first started this class, I would have said, I'm not a creative person. I cannot sing. As we near the last leg of this class, I would not choose to say those things again. because I've learned that even the things that didn't register as creative in my mind were things I was doing all the time. And while I may not be the best singer, I sing as loud as I can every Sunday at church. So this has been a beautiful thing that I've experienced through this class. And to sort of put that into context, I thought that so much that my very first interview with the pastoral charge I'm in right now, I told them that if they were looking for a minister that could sing, that was not me. I was not a singing minister. And this class has changed that for me. So what I decided to do for this class was to do a liturgical calendar, which would also incorporate my love of liturgical colors. So to explain where my love of liturgical colors come from, I really need to take you back to when I was a teenager. So I was a gay, closeted teenager living in rural Nova Scotia, and it was much safer for me to fit in, to never stand out. So I did everything I possibly could to blend in with the crowd. And then about 2000, I was 17 and the world was changing. I told my family and friends that I was gay, and all of a sudden I found myself wanting to stand out. And I kid you not, at 18, 19, and 20, I had platinum blonde hair. I would wear glow sticks, glitter, everything that I could think of so that I could stand out. And then somehow years passed by without me knowing, and I became older and 40 happened. And about a year ago, I found myself in a situation where I was meeting an older woman for the first time. She would have been about 83, 84 years old, and her opinion mattered to me. And I overheard her describing me, which was a compliment from her, and she chose to use two descriptive words. She said, "He's so plain and humble." And now that was meant as a compliment, but it hurt my feelings. And it took me about 2 weeks to really see that as a compliment that it was. In my mind, I was like, where is handsome? Where is nice? Where is funny? All of those kind of descriptors. And I looked in my closet during those 2 weeks when I was being bothered by that plain and humble. And about 3/4 of my closet were beige. So I purposely decided to wear my brightest shirt that hung in my closet for today's presentation. Now, when I was about 17 years old and I was sitting in the pews at my home church, the United Church crest hung on the wall in the sanctuary. And as many teenagers do, my mind was drifting and I got lost in the sermon, and I found that I was focusing on that United Church crest. And as I sat there in the pew, I realized that I did not understand what those symbols meant. And I wondered if I was the only one in the congregation that was unsure of what those symbols meant. So that moment has never left me, and it actually became a part of a conversation in our module over the last 2 weeks of how I like to teach. I don't like to do anything within our worship services that I don't fully understand and comprehend. And at the same time, I like to make sure that everybody that I'm asking to do things and to participate in our worship services understand what they're doing and what I'm asking of them. So I think of that crest in my mind. So I wanted to create a liturgical calendar that could be hung on the church wall that would walk us through all the different seasons of the church year. And now my complex relationship with color came back to me as I entered this pastoral charge. I left my home and I moved 2 hours away. I knew no one on this pastoral charge, no one on this shore. And all of a sudden, I realized that I was pulling out the grays and the blues and the very demure colors from my closet so that I would not stand out, so that I would blend in. And then I had this moment where I realized, no, you need to stand out, be yourself. And I decided that I needed to try and pull my brain out of my traditional mindset and into that contemporary. So I'm showing you 2 pictures on the side as well of the white hangings, the white pyramids in my home church. So when I think of liturgical colors, I have a very clear idea in my mind of what that shade of purple, that violet should be, what that shade of gold should be, and what that shade of white. So I needed to try with this assignment to pull myself away from that and go into a contemporary place outside of my comfort zone. So these are probably very familiar images to some of you. The image on the left hangs in my supervisor's office that I see every time we're there for a meeting. And the image on the right is a wheel that's hung in my mother's Sunday school room at our church for the last 30 years. So these were all playing into the vision, into what I was seeing in creating this hanging. Now, a problem I was again struggling with was I had this perception in my mind of what the purple should be, what the gold should be, all of these different colors, the green, all of those things. And I was struggling because I really wanted to do something outside of the box when it came to these colors. A tradition that came to me during the pandemic, on Sundays, I usually watch about 4 or 5 services that my friends have published online. And one of those churches is the neighboring congregation to my home church, Rawdon Hills Pastoral Church. And on this particular Sunday, when I was trying to decide if I could go to the contemporary with these fabric choices for this hanging, I saw our very own professor come up in my newsfeed. And I saw her purple stole, which instantly, gives me images of Lent and the somber season, being penitent, those types of things. And as I looked at that, I realized there are different shades of purple on that stole. There are different patterns on that stole. And it still evokes that same idea in my mind, that same symbolism of this season of Lent. So I decided that was enough for me, and I was going to dive in and do things contemporary. So one of the things, I am a full-time minister in solo ministry in this pastoral charge, so I spend a lot of my time doing pastoral care. And I identified a member of my congregation who is incredibly gifted. She has done so much artistically for our congregation, but over the last year, she's been struggling with her creativity. So we came together, and it was the hope that I would reignite her creativity, that I would spark that with her throughout this project, and through her, I would learn some of her technical skills. So this is a member of my congregation, Janet, who was an incredible help to me in this project. On the left, you'll see some of my notes as I tried to figure out how big this wall hanging was going to be, what colors, what seasons I wanted to include into the hanging. I initially thought that this would be a hanging about 4 feet by 4 feet. It ended up being about 11 feet. So it changed quite a lot. For inspiration, I chose to use some of the information from the Gathering magazine. If any of my United Church folks have not subscribed to that, it is an incredible resource that I would strongly recommend. And as I was planning the colors, you'll see that I have on my template here options for white or gold, purple or red, different types of scenario, green or orange, depending on what you're observing throughout the church year. And I'd like to read something to you that I read from the Gathering while I was creating this project that has stuck with me. Why not set aside the traditional white used for Easter? Within Western cultures, white has denoted goodness, innocence, and purity, and reflects a specific racial and cultural bias. In other cultures, white has associated and meanings that may or may not fit well with Easter celebrations. So this is something that hit really hard with me, because being inclusive is very important to me in my ministry. I did choose to continue to use white in the hanging. It is a tradition that I grew up with and in the pastoral charge, but I wanted to share that with you from the Gathering, because it is something that I continue to reflect on when I think of the Christ candle that we light every week that is white. Often when we do baptisms, children are dressed in white, those kind of things. So this is something I'm continuing to reflect on, and I thought I would share it with you as a point of reflection for you as well. Now we begin. I was fortunate to have Janet to be my help. She was very organized and fits very well with my type A personality. We had boxes and boxes of fabric that we were able to pull out and made a huge attempt to try and put together a hanging for the church. And if you'll notice, you'll look at those colors that I was still holding on to that idea of my solid, plain colors of what I thought should be for liturgical colors. So even though I was trying to stretch myself as far as I could, and you can see that in a few of those colors that I'm using, I was still holding on to that traditional side of my brain. You can see in the left is the material has been cut out and starting to be pieced together, that I was able to overcome that idea of what those colors had to be in my mind and pick some contemporary fabrics that had patterns and that would be a little bit more showy on the church wall. On the right, you'll see what I consider to be one of the most amazing pieces of equipment I've ever seen. A sewing machine in my mind has one bobbin and a pedal that I would have sewn a pillow on in grade 7. This machine would connect it to an iPad. We would pick fonts and it would embroider. It was absolutely incredible. So the quilt was made entirely by machine. It was not hand quilted. This, you'll see the border has been placed around all the different liturgical colors. And in my blueprint, what I decided to do was I assigned certain measurements to each week so that the colors would truly reflect the length of time for each season of the church year. Now you'll see on the right-hand side of the border, I began including the seasons of the church year. Epiphany, Christmas, Lent that we're in, and it's highlighted in the image on your right. So this again was done by the embroidery machine. And then I chose, the United Church puts out an annual document every year with all of the observances that we do in the United Church. Truthfully, that document is about 3 or 4 pages long. So I could not include all of those observances. So I did go with the traditional observances for this hanging. You'll see that we've attached the hooks at the top so that it can be hung from the church walls. And here is the final product, all 11 feet of it, that will be adorned from the sanctuary walls. On the right-hand side, you'll see all the different seasons of the church year and all of the, what I would call special observances throughout the Christian year as well. So how this is going to be used in worship is this will be hanging from the sanctuary. In Easter, we're going to start in the bulletin where we will have the colors for that season written and explain the symbolism for the congregation. And we will refer to this calendar as we go throughout the seasons of the church year. It will also be used for Sunday school. I do have one church that we are very hopeful that we will have a Sunday school that will start up in the fall. And this will be used for children's time as a way of teaching them about the liturgical calendar as well. It was an incredibly rewarding experience for me. I did not expect that this assignment would cause me to do so much self-reflection as we were trying to pull that creative aspect out of me. So incredibly rewarding. And now I will open up if there are any questions anyone would like to ask me. You will notice that the colors, liturgical colors are incredibly interesting. The United Church doesn't necessarily ascribe to any particular set of colors, but I chose to incorporate the colors of the tradition that I grew up with and the pastoral charge that I am right now. The orange was probably one of the colors that some of my minister friends balked at a little bit for creation time, as that's something that we've only been using in the United Church since 2011. But I wanted to include that on this liturgical calendar. And I do have it here. It's a little too big at 11 feet for me to show with this camera, but just so you can get an idea of the texture, this is what we're looking at.
That's amazing, Jamie.
It was incredibly rewarding. It shocked me a little bit when it ended up being 11 feet from the 4 feet I had envisioned in my mind. But thankfully, we have high ceilings in the church.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. What a great gift of creativity. I am so impressed with all of your varied creative ingenuity. So yes, comments, questions back to Jamie. Again, kudos in terms of inviting somebody else into this process and doing something that is going to be so centered and visual for your pastoral charge. So Jackie, then Sonia, then Rachel.
And Jamie, that's amazing. I just had a question on the places where you have the color halfway. Is that to show us a specific thing within the midst of another season?
So if you, it's a little different for different scenarios. So often you'll see white paired with those yellows, those golds. So what that would be is we have a choice of whether we would use both gold and yellow, or just one or the other as for a liturgical color for that season.
Okay.
But then if you scroll down and you see where I had the orange and the green. So within the United Church, we have several weeks, 5 or 6, depending on the year, that we celebrate creation time.
Mm-hmm.
It is not a season of the church year, but it is an option that we have as far as an observance.
Yeah.
So I included that there with the green on the side, that we have the option to stick with our normal after Pentecost, or we can go with creation time.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Great. Sonia.
I was going to say, folks may have noticed I'm a cross stitcher. And so when I'm listening to people, and I hope nobody takes offense, but when I'm listening, I listen better when my hands are busy. So I cross stitch in class while we're talking. And so of course, the placement of all the lettering alone, even though she had a machine, I mean, I get to count my stitches here and my crosses. It's much harder with what you guys were doing to get that so beautifully lined up. But I'm really curious, did Janet find her creativity spark again?
So on Sunday, we've been doing a Lenten series of Lenten practices. And at the end of every service, I give the congregation as well as myself a Lenten practice to practice for the week. So the one that we were currently working on was being appreciative and being content with what we have been given in our lives. And I decided that I would practice what I preach, and I wanted to share something that I appreciated, and I shared how much I appreciated Janet's help with this project. And at the end of that, she stood up and she thanked me at the exact same time for resparking the creative that she has lost. Janet has had a very challenging year that I've been working with through pastoral care. So that is in part why she lost her creative spark, as she would call it. So it was a very beautiful moment to hear that she feels that creativity is back in part to working on this project with me.
That's awesome.
Rachel.
Jamie, I'm so appreciative of you sharing your story, your thought process, and the amount of planning and effort that has gone into that is really, really special. And I think this is one of those cases where you can see that in the finished product. I think sometimes, especially as a student, you put all this work into papers and it just doesn't always look like the amount of work that you put in. But my goodness, 11 feet of beautiful, beautiful calendar. It really is stunning. Really, really well done. Well done.
Thank you. It was perhaps one of the more interesting things of this project for me was how, even though I had decided, I was not going to play it safe, when I started looking at those pictures, I realized that I was still trying to do that, and I had to try and fight that creativity to overcome that. So hopefully that came through in the final product. I believe it did.
Absolutely, Jamie. Absolutely. Yeah. Jackie.
Also, Jamie, I like your shirt.
We expect bright colors all summer.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you so much. All right. Fabulous. All right. Lois, let's turn it over to you.
Hello, I'm Lois, and actually, I'm not that creative, so my biggest fear of this semester was this project that I had to do, and I was struggling a lot. And where I got my inspiration was one Sunday. Our service is at 2 o'clock because we are such a small congregation, Korean, Canadian congregation, and we are such a small group speaking 2 languages. So we're a bilingual church. And then the church, so we are having our worship service in one of the United Church in Bedford area. And so we have a service at 2 o'clock, and it was one Sunday. It was cold and cloudy, and it was gloomy. It was very the weather wasn't good and everything. And then I was sitting in the sanctuary waiting for the service to begin. But then as soon as the service began, because like the church has a lot of big windows, and also there's some stained glasses, and like it's like there's a lot of windows all around the sanctuary. And then as soon as the praise team started to sing, I experienced something amazing at that time. Like the sun started to shine, and then the whole church was full of light. And then I was feel the warmth of the sun and the brightness, and it changed the whole mood of the service. And then when I was sitting there singing and I was praising and praying, I kind of felt like, like God being with me, and I was very like touched at that moment. So I wanted to create something using I really love stained glass and like the way how the light comes in and everything. So I wanted to create something that has a feeling of a stained glass and something with the light and everything. So, but then I'm not I have no clue with the glass work. I had no clue with all that thing. So I decided to go back to the childhood basic. And I decided to use a tissue paper and also the black Bristol board to create my work. So maybe I'm gonna try to show it to you. It's nothing fancy, but let me try to turn on the light. And I don't know if you will be able to see this. Maybe I have to take out the blur.
Yeah, take out the blur from your Zoom.
Yes, let me try that. This is what I created.
Wow.
So, yes, so this is all the tissue paper. So what I did was I just ripped out all the tissue papers in different sizes and different colors and different shapes. And I intentionally did that to make it look like this. And then I just overlapped it. I just glued it on the white paper. And then the thing that took me the longest was to cut out the cross shape. This is a thick, the foamy black blackboard, because I want it to be sturdy and strong. So yeah, cutting this was a bit of job, but other than that, it was easy because I just had to rip it and I just had to put them together, and then it wasn't a big of a deal. But then cutting it was very that was a challenge for me. But yes, but other than that, it was very easy and everything. But then when I was doing this, what I thought was that the tissue paper symbolizes us, the believers in Christ. We are all different shape, different sizes. We have different pain, different background, different culture, and even between the family members, nobody's same, right? So I intentionally wanted to make it into a different shape and different thing. But then the thing is, what I really like about the tissue paper is when you overlap them and when the light is shining, it kind of makes different shades and different color. When they're together, it makes a more, so to say, beautiful color that comes through. When it's alone, it's simple, but it's not that great. But when they're like put together, even though they're all crumbled together, I think that's what makes it beautiful. So I wanted to put it in the cross and to show that when we worship together, when we come to the worship together, when we come together as a believers of a Christ, we say we are the light of the world, right? And then that true light comes through the Christ. And then when we are together, the true light can actually shine on, right? And we can actually feel the warmth of God's love. And in that warmth, we can also share the warmth of love to our neighbors, to the people around us. So that was yes, that was that's what I wanted to create through this piece of art. And I think in terms of a usage in the worship, I think this can be used as a decoration during the Lent period of time. I created the smaller version of it, but I think this size can go on top of the table with the light at the back. It can be candle, or it can be a small, the small stand light, or any kind of light can go behind, because this is very, the light will show very easy, because since this is very thin tissue paper. So I thought maybe this can go on top of the table. And I also thought if I create, the larger version of it, it can also go at the backdrop on the Easter service with the stand light lighting at the back. Mm-hmm. And then we can have our praise team and everyone come up the stage in front of this big cross that we have, and have our worship together. So I thought it might be meaningful, and it might be different kind of visuals that we can have at the time of Lent. Yes.
Fabulous. You could even invite people to help in the creation of it by adding their own tissue paper pieces.
Mm-hmm.
You had it created.
Actually, the week before Easter this year, our children's minister, she has something, so she can't be there. So I have to prepare something for the children's ministry on that week. So I'm thinking maybe we can do something like this and then put it up on the Easter service. So I'm thinking maybe, because it's just this black part is the difficult part. So if I bring this part, if I make it and then bring it and then have all the children come and then put all the tissue papers into a larger size, and then maybe we can set it up for the Easter service. So I thought maybe I'll do something, I'll prepare something for the first week of April, and then do something together for the decoration.
That's a great idea. You could also bring this to chapel for sometime in the summer. I just want to see all of these things in person. That would be great. Comments, questions, back to Lois. Philip.
It's just a comment, really, but I just want to say, first of all, that is incredible and very beautiful. And I know it wasn't intentional, but the way that it was revealed to us, how it was blurred, and when you unblurred it, it just exploded out towards us. It reminded me of your story about when you were in the chapel and then the sun came through. So thank you for that experience. You did an amazing job.
Thank you.
Absolutely, you're right, Philip. Angela.
Yes, I was going to say that it's beautiful, and thank you for doing it. But I can also see a use for it in a nursing home, where if you're doing a service in a nursing home and you want to create some sacred space and have a little bit of an altar. I could see it being used there to help with a visual image for some of the people who have dementia and might need that as a cue to let them know that they are in sacred space. So I would see a use for it there. So.
Thank you.
That's really insightful, Angela. Thank you. You're right. Kevin.
Philip took my comment. I hope Lois that you get a chance to see the video, see this video, so that you can be witness to that moment of its revealing. It was
Oh,
stunning.
thank you. I was actually very discouraged because other people like I see all their presentation. I was so amazed by it. I was like, oh, but thank you.
But just in terms of its live use, then the question of how you use light and how you might be able to replicate a similar kind of experience, whether it is always lit or how light might be used to augment that. And thank you also for your the theological background to this. Thank you very much. That was very very moving.
Absolutely. Any other comments? I just love it. My eye is drawn to it.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Again, such varied presentations today. Like, just thank you. And last but certainly not least is Tabitha, who's been waiting patiently to do her presentation. And then in 2 weeks' time, when we meet for our last class, Rachel, Debbie, and Angela will be presenting. You're muted, Tabitha.
You knew I wasn't talking, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah. Haha, I'm not very funny. Okay, I'm going to try to share my screen. Does anybody see that?
I do.
Good. Hopefully. Still?
Yep.
Okay, good. This doesn't always show for me the same.
From the beginning? Yep.
In the beginning, there was a church that I have been going to on Wednesday evenings, which was someone's vision that a church that had been there had died off. And they said, perhaps we could reallocate this space for many things that would benefit the community. And one of those things was to have a church that people could come to that were from all different kinds of walks of life and faiths. So this intentional community uses 5 symbols for our faith. The one is the scriptures. So every week we review what those 5 symbols are, and people participate by putting their hand up if that particular symbol is of meaning to them for that week. The cross, which the focus is more on the resurrection and the new covenant, that we have hope through Jesus. The Eucharist, so there's a chalice, and that's our symbol that we remember who we are in Christ and that we all come to the table. The towel and basin is there, and that we participate in the ministry, and that we have a servant savior, and that we also will serve. This is something that I hadn't really seen too much in our church before, but the oil of healing and anointing, and he would go back to the Samaritan, putting oil and wine on the wounds and taking the man to the inn, and then the anointing that happens at baptism, and then going into the ministry. So I thought that was really wonderful. Now this is my project. This is a baptismal font, and it is not stained right now because I'm not allowed to do that in the house. Jeez. So anyways, to say more about the creative, I was inspired by this church, that the font is at the entranceway as we come into the worship area, that the words, remember your baptism. And the odd thing is I actually was baptized as an adult, so, or, younger person, but I can remember. But thinking about everyone who's around me thinking, yeah, you're not going to remember. You're all babies, right? And yet, what does that mean? So it really started to take on a meaning for me. So I looked online at baptismal fonts, and I could not find any instructions at all of how to make one. And so I tried to draw and, create patterns. And I found this bowl on Facebook Marketplace. And the picture doesn't do it as much justice. It's a little richer colors. But it just kind of reminded me of like an enlivened water, And so I started to make this font kind of around the bowl. So I usually go dumpster diving and get wood from a stair company, but that's all nice and straight wood. And it was in my kitchen, about 200 pounds of it, making us have lots of stumbling blocks. And I chose not to use any of that. So I went out to my shop and got some live edge wood that I had out there. And so when I found them, I was thinking about, when I chose it, 3 different kinds of wood that would emulate the diversity that we have within our community, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And I chose the shape of the wood because I didn't want things to be symmetrical. I wanted to show that things are a little bit not exact, that there's freedom in movement, that it was more alive. So each of the pieces of the legs comes up, but in and of themselves, they couldn't support anything. And in fact, when the baptismal font is put on, it actually brings stability to the entire unit. So there's black walnut is the base, and then it's a live edge cherry and a butternut wood. So I just thought baptism is ancient, and yet it enlivens us. So we die and yet we are raised. And so I wanted that feeling of something that has been around for a really long time, but represents life. So like I said, I didn't make the shapes exactly. So each piece is a little bit different. And let me see here. Two of the pieces are cherry. They're very hard. If you try to cut that stuff, I'll tell you, wasn't fun. But I just really wanted it to be something that would be used in the future, that would bring a connection for people. Now in the summer, when I was there, I went quahog shell digging. And these shells are, for those who took the Indigenous course, are used to make the wampum belts. And so I dug up a lot of these, and I brought them back for people here at the reservation that wanted to make some wampum belts. But I thought, this is a sign of a covenant between people. And I'd seen in pictures that they had used shells to pour the water over the child. And I thought, what better to do than to use something that actually is meaningful towards a covenant. There I am, pouring my water. Woohoo! Just think, baptism doesn't happen in the kitchen often, but that's the best I could do. My shell. So the rationale for using art in worship for me is that there's a mystery of the faith that in the words of the telling, there's still an unstated something. And even though we can use art, it allows for that mystery. It holds that tension nicely. And so we all learn different ways, and the visual, I think, helps people. And it's a little bit kinesthetic too, that people can reach out and touch something and understand God's message better. So I wanted it to be accessible, to have it filled with water, that there'd be a multi-sensory experience for people to have remembrance, for them to have a shared identity and an opportunity for participation. I can't even read my own thing there, but there. So the placement and access, I would do the same way as this church that I've been going to, is to have it as people come in. And interestingly enough, watching the people who've come in, some people have a Catholic background, others from different denominations, and the willingness for people to put their fingers into the water, to sometimes sprinkle themselves, to mark a cross, that they're remembering the commitment, the covenant, the relationship that they have as they enter into the worship space. So for them, I think they acknowledge their identity as a child of God. There it is again. And this word has been used before, is the embodied worship. So not just the cognitive sense, but there's actually a performative piece to our worship, that we include our hearts and our minds and our bodies. And I've watched this last year how some of the rituals and the symbols have meant so much to the people in the community, and makes not only a unity, but a connection between their faith and the embodied practice. So I see the whole entire person being accessed and participating. So with a fuller integration of their beliefs, that it engages all the senses, and there's meaning making and meaning being found in the remembrance of the baptism. And the feelings that I think that and thoughts, maybe a sense of belonging, purpose, forgiveness, love, and a deeper knowing and confidence in one's own faith. And there's my son. We decided not to play the video because it's a little silly. But I said, come over here. And so he did. He's a little tall and he didn't bend down, so it didn't work. But I just wanted to know, how would it feel to participate with somebody in such a significant moment? And yet what I've seen all year is people going themselves and remembering their baptism. So what I saw, like I said, was people putting it on their forehead, scooping the water, refreshing their face. And every single time that people come, they're reminded and encouraged to remember their baptism, to remember that the Holy Spirit is working within them and being born of the water and the Spirit. And that requires us to respond, that there's a response to Christ in that. And this is my daughter, and it's short.
Nice.
So, oh, she did it again. Sorry. Now I'm trying to get out of that one. So, of course, this is our creed. And every single week at this service that we would say the creed. And once again, it's another ritual. And so seeing baptism as the entryway into the faith, and in the space, the entryway into the worship, that it frames the reference to the experience and allows it to be something tangible and concrete as well as a witness, I think too, that we're not alone, we're all together. And as people walk in, you know, who will dip their fingers and how will they do it and how will they take that opportunity. So I think that's it that I have. If there's any questions. I'm trying to figure out, how do I end this? Well,
There, I stopped screen sharing for you.
thank you so much.
So we are back. Thank you. What a creative endeavor. That looks beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. What a glorious piece. Have you worked with wood for a long time, Tabitha? Is that something that you enjoy doing?
I enjoy it. I'm not necessarily great at it. It was a challenge because of all the snow and my fractured hand. So, but in putting it together, 3 of us had to do it. So that was
great.
Just like everyone else who had someone else participate. It certainly helped a lot.
I loved the shape and the texture of the bowl, and I loved it looked like rope around the top. Very beautiful. Other comments, questions? Back to Tabitha. Jackie.
I was just curious, Tabitha, when you stain it, are you intending to stain it each of the woods different?
Well, because they're all different, I'm going to use an like an oil, like a timber oil or something, and it will just enhance the natural grains and colors. If I was to wet it, you would see how beautiful the wood is. It doesn't really demonstrate it right now, but like I said, I'm not allowed. So I have to behave.
When the weather warms up and you can take it outside.
But I would love for it to go somewhere that, you know, maybe there won't be little children that will come and be baptized, but that people can actually engage in remembering their entrance into, you know, God's family. So
are you planning to bring it for this summer?
If it could stay there, I would bring it. However, you know, we could barely get home when I had left a lot of stuff at school. So it seems like I'm not a good packer.
Thank you. Well, it's really beautiful. Donna.
Thank you so much, Tabitha, for sharing that. And it's absolutely beautiful. It would enhance any sanctuary. I especially loved the fact that 3 pieces were all different, but then were joined, you know, and by having this baptismal font on top, I thought that was very meaningful. And I'm still using my little keychain you brought this summer. So thank you for that as well.
Great. Thanks, Donna. Chris.
Yeah, Tabitha, I still have the coaster next to my bed as well. I use it every morning with my coffee and think of you. I just wanted to say I really thought that was super cool how like you brought together woodworking, which is one of the most, you know, primary artistic crafts going, and then combine that with the like the really high Trinitarian theology of, you know, baptism and water and spirit, and just that sort of bringing together of, you know, one of the most primary crafts going, and then like the highest, you know, like kind of the highest theology. I just thought that was really cool, and yeah, awesome. That's all I got.
Anybody else have comments or questions? Well, I have to say, you have blown me away again with the depth and the quality and the way you connected with your own sites with these presentations, the way that you stretched yourself to do something outside of your comfort zone. Every one of those 6 presentations today were so different one from another. And yeah, these have all been just exemplary. I'm just so glad that I forced you to be creative and to be able to explore something that maybe was outside of the kind of traditional academic realm. So thank you all for doing that. And I will upload the recording back up onto our Brightspace if you want to go back and look at any of those presentations all over again. But thank you again for just a magnificent class. Truly appreciated everything. So one more learning module to go, folks. And then we will be coming to the end of class. So Leslie and I will be responsible for our closing worship in 2 weeks' time. And so what we'll do at that final class is begin with the presentations, and we will draw class to a conclusion with worship. And just a heads up, I've had another school request responsibility that's going to actually end up being at the same time as what would be an office hour next Monday. So if you have anything that you need to check in with me about, just send me an email and we will find a time to chat. But I will not be doing an office hour next Monday because of another AST responsibility. Okay. All right. Reach out if you have any questions. Blessings as we go to this last module, and most of you just did an exceptional job on Brightspace in the discussions on sacraments last time around. So I'm really looking forward to what you have to offer as we think about other rituals, because there's so much to think about in that. So take care, and blessings on the next 2 weeks, and see you all soon.